most striking thing about The Witch, in my opinion, was that it had such vast differences to the kind of horror films you'd expect today. But its lack of jump scares, or scares for that fact, all goes to make The Witch one of the most haunting and terrifying horror movies I've ever seen. Its culmination of immaculate codes and conventions all add up to that lasting impression that was ever so terrifyingly imprinted in my mind at night when I'm trying to sleep at 12 in the morning. So yeah, without further ado, here's a short analysis into why I think The Witch is so terrifyingly scary. Also, yeah, spoilers. In a variety of modern day horror films, or even classics for that matter, there's a specific structure to the way scares are developed, at least in my perspective. Basically, there'll be an inciting moment that lets the characters and us know something bad's about to happen. The tension is built upon through a long extended sequence where the directors really milk out every drop of suspense, building up of course to the climax or the scare. Now here's a quick example. In Conjuring 2, because, well, I just can't stop talking about The Conjuring on this channel, there's a scene where Lorraine Warren discovers the nun appear behind her, which is the inciting moment. There's a long sequence where she repeatedly turns around while the nun gets closer and closer, the tension, which leads up to the scare. The problem with this structure, I guess, is that as soon as the jump scare happens, the audience drops back into a state of relief, where they can breathe again or catch their breath, thereby making the producers have to redevelop the sequences again and again so that they can continually build suspense. Now yes, this isn't really the structure of a feature-length film, and there'll obviously be variations to this, but at its core this is how a scare sequence is shot. The Witch has none of this. While there aren't really any genuine scares in the film, the entire narrative is able to fully milk out the tension throughout the entire movie, even at the end when we don't get a specific climax and release of tensions, because the entire movie is hell-bent on constantly pushing the boundaries of suspense. When the end credits roll, we aren't given that release, and so that feeling of tension and uneasiness sticks with you even after the film. So let's rewind a little, shall we? At the very beginning, the first shot we are given is a close-up of Anya Taylor-Joy's character Thomasin. Remember this shot. We learn that her family is being banished by the local church for religious conflict, I think, and they're sent away to live by themselves in the forest. We get an incredibly eerie wide shot of them riding off into the woods, the low camera angle establishing the forest as menacing and ominous. Now this is further realized through the haunting soundtrack, which is just so terrifying. Another element used in The Witch to evoke tension in the movie is the use of disturbing imagery. The first instance we see the witch is when she's kidnapped the family's baby boy Samuel, where she slaughters him and paints his blood over her body. Jeez, that's rough. Now she's also shown to be an old naked woman, which I suppose is reminiscent of how witches were portrayed in that period, I guess. And no, I'm not showing any of that here, sorry. Now another instance of disturbing imagery is when Thomasin's brother Caleb meets the witch. However, she appears to be a seductive woman in a red coat that lures him in. Oh yeah, there's also an apple he spits out later on, which is just... You see, the film plays with a lot of old, somewhat nostalgic images, like the Little Red Riding Hood, and twists it just enough so that you're familiar with it, but wildly uncomfortable. Also, there's a lot of religious themes being played upon here, which I find scary. You'll see this often when the family prays or when they mention the church. For example, here the mother Catherine is praying to God, which is further shown through the bright sunlight coming through her front, her back facing the darkness of the room. See, I study media. I know what I'm talking about, okay? Now, the religious symbolism extends beyond lighting, especially in the form of the goat and the bunny. The goat does have a myriad of lore behind it and its representations of the devil, but I'm not exactly too sure what the hare would symbolize. I've done brief research and I guess it has connotations too, like the goat, but hey, if anyone's got any clue, feel free to let me know. I guess it's up to you. The climax of the film occurs when Caleb returns to the family and is clearly different. The shit hits the fan, however, when the family turns on each other, accusing each other of being a witch and conspiring with the devil. Ugh, this scene is just so disturbing. And that goes back to my contention of the film, that there's never really any peaks in jump scares, and therefore there's never really a release of tension. It's always constantly building suspense throughout, and that's why the film is constantly so disturbing. The acting as well, Caleb spazzing out and yelling bizarre phrases, the kids suddenly going out into a trance? Robert Eggers wisely chose to constantly build tension in a more indie style way, as opposed to the classical modern day horror structure, which all adds up to the film's overall unsettling vibe. I'm just gonna go ahead and cut to the ending of the film, because that's where the film really got to me. So after her family meets their fatal end, a bit generic for horror movies, don't you think? We see Thomasin talk directly to Black Phillip in hopes for help, which is done through a POV shot from the goat. Now the voice manipulation here is just truly terrifying. There's something about the whispering that's just, it's so off. That's the voice I imagine in my head when I'm home alone or about to sleep, and it's just so eerie.
What dost thou want?
Tell me that doesn't give you nightmares. So Thomasin goes off into the woods under the direction of Black Phillip, and this sequence lasts a while. This, mixed with the ever so haunting soundtrack of malevolent chanting, as well as the dark lighting, further accentuates the terrifying atmosphere as she approaches the circle of naked women having a ritual in the woods around a campfire. Jeez Louise, that's scary. I'm just gonna skip that, partly because I shouldn't show that here, but also because I don't really want to talk about it while I'm home alone, sorry. So Thomasin joins the circle, a little shy and uncomfortable. To be honest, that's me in new social situations, so I can relate. But as soon as the circle of women start floating up, there's a sense of ecstasy and euphoria which consumes her as she too begins to float up. Look at me using big words. Now this close-up right here directly contrasts that of the first shot of the film, remember? Which is a perfect example of how a narrative ends by directly linking to the beginning. At the start, we see her standing formally, clean Puritan clothes, and a fairly monotone facial expression. Now you compare that to this, and you really get a sense of Thomasin's character development throughout the narrative. In the end, she's laughing maniacally, her hands spread out to express her openness, as well as her not wearing clothes. Also, the hue from the campfire helps further accentuate her malicious turn from the pale sunlight in the first scene to the night campfire in the ending. Yeah, great film. I don't want to talk about it again, okay? It's so terrifying. And hopefully this shortish video will help explain why I think it's so effective. This is the kind of video that I've always wanted to do for this channel, and seeing as though I'm doing media in school, hopefully I can get around to do more of these. Good practice, I guess. If you like this, let me know. If not, that's okay. You're entitled to your own opinion. I'll see you guys soon.
If you liked this video, click my picture in the middle to subscribe and help support me. If you want to see my life